All right, y'all, welcome to the show. A lot to get to today, so in just a second, Pete Hegseth crashes and burns in his confirmation hearing spectacularly. I mean, he's just getting lit up. I can't wait for you guys to see some of the clips I have here for you. Then we'll get to Jack Smith. His final report has dropped, and it's a bombshell, bro. He basically says, hey, this thing was a wrap. It was done. Trump would have been convicted. So we'll dive into that. We also have Jon Stewart nuking MAGA into orbit over their LA wildfire BS. Nancy Mace tries to fight a Democratic congresswoman. I mean, you can't make this up. I mean, this is like total white trash, Jerry Springer nonsense, but we'll get into that as well. Michael Moore is telling Biden to, and I quote, fucking do it in terms of go out strong here in the closing days of his administration. And the Biden administration all but admits that their Gaza policy failed miserably. So I'll show you that clip as well. It's from Anthony Blinken. So everybody do me a big favor. Please subscribe to the channel. As you guys know, that helps out massively. It costs you nothing at all. And of course, much love and appreciation. Everybody who supports this show on Patreon. We could not do it without you guys. Thank you to everybody who tips on YouTube as well. Real independent media here, not fake independent media. Never talk to an advertiser. Very proud of that fact. You guys keep this show independent, honest, etc. So, all right, without any further ado, let's dive into it here. Here we have Pete Hegseth. He's having his confirmation hearing. Now, of all of Trump's picks for his cabinet, he is viewed as one of the choices that's going to be hardest to get approved. And the reason for that is because he's a Fox News host. He was literally a pro-war activist, and then he parlayed that into a Fox News host. And the only reason Trump picked him is because he saw him on TV. And this is how Trump, I mean, you guys remember, he picked like Larry Kudlow in his first administration. Larry Kudlow has been on TV for decades. And so he thinks, yeah, he's on the shows. He must be bright. He must be smart. Bring him into the administration. And so, I mean, this guy's got a laundry list of issues as they got into in the hearing. Now, some of it was personal stuff, relationship stuff, addiction stuff. That was a bulk of the hearing, actually, if I'm being honest. But we also got these other moments, these substantive moments, which really, really expose just how far we've fallen, okay? So let's start with this one here. We have Senator Hirono asking Pete Hegseth, basically, what happens if Trump orders you to do something that's very obviously unconstitutional? What do you do? And here's the answer.
2020, then President Trump directed former Secretary of Defense Mark Esper to shoot protesters in the legs in downtown D.C., an order Secretary Esper refused to comply with. Would you carry out such an order from President Trump?
Senator, I was in the Washington, D.C. National Guard unit that was in Lafayette Square during those events.
Would you carry out an order to shoot protesters in the legs?
I saw 50 Secret Service agents get injured by rioters trying to jump over the fence, set the church on fire, and destroy a statue.
That sounds to me that you will comply with such an order. You will shoot protesters in the leg.
I mean, yeah, she's right. She's right. You know how you answer that question if you wouldn't shoot protesters in the leg? You go, yeah, I wouldn't shoot them in the leg. He did not do that. He went right into tap dance mode, basically arguing like, they were really violent, they were really bad, these were rioters, something had to be done. And the reason why this is indicative of how far we've fallen is because, at least in the past, they would have put a veneer of seriousness over it, right? There would have been some politically correct answer of, look, the Constitution is the law of the land. That's really what governs my action. And so if I'm told to do something that I know is unconstitutional, I can't do that because I swear an oath to the Constitution, right? You would say something like that. I mean, even during the lawless days of the Bush administration, and they violated the Constitution left and right, they tried to put up the veneer of seriousness and respectability. Now we're at the point where they're like, yeah, we're outlaws, we're criminals, we're thugs, we're gangsters, and we're not even really going to try to hide it. I mean, this effectively, guys, this is a softball question. That was just that softball right down the center of the plate. And what does he do? He whiffs, he swings, and he misses, right? But he's trying to play to two audiences. He's both trying to get approved, but he also knows Trump is going to watch every second of this, and Trump wants to hear ultimate loyalty, right? And so that's how he splits the difference. But to be fair, he's not even really splitting the difference. He's basically saying, Yeah, I would shoot them in the leg. Yeah, I would do something that's deeply, deeply unconstitutional. All right, we got more. So now we go to Tom Cotton, and this is on the issue of Israel.
The first one accused you of being a Christian Zionist. I'm not really sure why that is a bad thing. I'm a Christian. I'm a Zionist. Zionism is that the Jewish people deserve a homeland in the ancient Holy Land where they've lived since the dawn of history. Do you consider yourself a Christian Zionist?
Senator, I'm a Christian, and I robustly support the state of Israel and its existential defense, and the way America comes alongside them is a great ally.
Thank you. Because another protester, and I think this one was a member of Code Pink, which, by the way, is a Chinese Communist front group these days, said that you support Israel's war in Gaza. I support Israel's existential war in Gaza. I assume, like me and President Trump, you support that war as well, don't you?
Senator, I do. I support Israel destroying and killing every last member of Hamas.
Really? That's interesting, because we have a story later about how Hamas is just as strong, if not stronger, than it was previously, because for every person you killed, you created more Hamas members. This has nothing to do with going after Hamas. This has to do with ethnic cleansing. This has to do with genocide. This has to do with destroying all of Gaza. And here he comes proudly, all these people who 5.5 minutes ago, they were out there like, America first, bro, we're America first, bro, we're America first, bro. Now, all of a sudden, it's coddle Israel's balls, tell them they're special, say, bro, I prioritize them for sure. I'm all about it. I'm totally for Israel. And notice how they phrase it too. I support Israel's existential war. This war is only, and it's not even a war, it's a genocide. It's existential for Palestinians who have seen, depending on what numbers you believe, anywhere from 50,000 to like 200,000 of them die, 90% of which are civilians. But again, look at how casually they say these things in the midst of what looks like Nazi Germany, right? What looks like Netanyahu may as well get that little Hitler mustache going and start speaking in German very loudly and aggressively, because that's basically what's going on right now. And look at how excited they are to support Israel in the midst of this. And then, of course, he had to throw in the smear of Code Pink. Had to throw that in there. All right, we got more. So proud Christian Zionist. And by the way, I should also point out, that group of people, they frame it like, oh, it's so benign. It's like, of course, this is such a good thing. Go read what they actually believe. Go look at somebody like Mike Huckabee, who, by the way, was picked to be ambassador to Israel. These people believe the end times are coming in their lifetime. The rapture is coming, and Jesus is going to come down on a white horse to Israel, kill most of the Jews, admit some into heaven. They think this is all going to happen in their lifetime. This absolute fairy tale nonsense, and they act accordingly with that. All right, let me give you more. So here's Elizabeth Warren asking a very important question of Pete Hegseth, and look at this weasel.
I would consult with the president about what the policy should be at the Defense Department.
In other words, you're quite sure that every general who serves should not go directly into the defense industry for 10 years. But you're not willing to make that same pledge?
I'm not a general, Senator.
You'll be the one, let us just be clear, in charge of the generals. So you're saying sauce for the goose, but certainly not sauce for the gander?
I would want to see what the policy of the president is.
I'll bet you would.
That's incredible. This is such an incredible clip. So look, basically the idea is there's this policy floating out there in the ether. It's the notion that, hey, these generals should not be able to go work for defense contractors as soon as they're done, because, I mean, if you think about it, they might make decisions which are good for the companies that they are going to work for. There's a silent agreement, or maybe even not so silent agreement, where it's like, you make decisions with our foreign policy that's going to benefit our bottom line. Raytheon, Boeing, Halliburton, right? And so you have this terrible incentive structure where it's like, hey, more war. If all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And you know you're going to get paid, like Dick Cheney's exit bonus from Halliburton. You know you're going to get paid if you do more war, right? And so terrible incentive built in there. And so the idea people are saying now is, well, we should ban the generals from working for these defense contractors for a decade. Now, by the way, think of how silly that is, right? We should half solve the problem. Why only a decade? Why wouldn't you ban them forever from working with these defense contractors, right? Because, by the way, the other thing they could do is take a different job title and still get paid by the defense contractors. It's just like, it's a disgusting, grotesque, incestuous system that prioritizes more war, incentivizes more war. And apparently Hegseth is smart enough to say, like, oh yeah, that's a good idea for the generals. But then when Elizabeth Warren is like, okay, will you take that same pledge that you're not going to work for these companies for a decade because that's a horrible incentive? He goes, I'm not a general. In other words, bitch, I'm trying to get paid. As soon as I'm done with this, I'm outskis to cash in. One more time, again, look at his smug weasel face as he says this.
President, about what the policy should be
In
at the Defense
other
Department.
words, you're quite sure that every general who serves should not go directly into the defense industry for 10 years. But you're not willing to make that same pledge?
I'm not a general, Senator.
You'll be
Look at that face. Look at that face. Look, I know Pete Hegseth is stupid, but is he too stupid to understand? You're just admitting up front here that you're for sale, that you're corrupt. Because again, back in the day, they at least had the wherewithal to try to pretend, to try to hide it, to try to put a veneer of respectability over it, to say the right thing in front of the cameras, but then behind the scenes in a smoke-filled back room, maybe admit the truth. Here, he's like, oh, I'm not a general. Again, I'm asking you, is he too stupid? Or does he just know, hey, there are no consequences for any of this shit, so I'll just admit to being corrupt? Again, look at his face.
You're not willing to make that same pledge?
I'm not a general, Senator.
You'll be the one.
He thinks he nailed it. Yeah, by the way, everybody laughing in that room, Republican. Every single person laughing in that room is a Republican. Only a Republican would find it funny, like, oh, you're Secretary of Defense? Then you're going to go cash in with the defense contractors? Well, aren't you incentivized to sell more weapons to more brutal regimes, do more war? By the way, we fund 73% of the world's dictatorships. 73%. I'm sure he'd like to up that number to 100%. Right? The more contracts he gets for the defense contractors, the more they're going to pay him.
Let us just be clear, in charge of the generals. So you're saying sauce for the goose, but certainly not sauce for the gander?
I would want to see what the policy of the
Oh, I'll
president
bet you would.
Thank you.
I'd want to see the policy. Oh, yeah. You're very serious, man. That's what you are. Well, I would like to analyze the policy. God, man. God, this country is so cooked. All right, so we got Senator Jack Reed, Democrat, grilling him on the issue of war crimes. Again, you would think, softball down the center of the plate, say the right thing. He can't help himself.
Who served in combat with these convicted service members were not supportive of the pardons. They did their duty as soldiers to report war crimes. Your definition of lethality seems to embrace those people who do commit war crimes, rather than those who stand up and say, this is not right. So what's the response to your service members who personally witnessed these and courageously reported them to their superiors?
Senator, as someone who's led men in combat directly and had to make very difficult decisions, I've thought very deeply about the balance between legality and lethality, ensuring that the men and women on the front lines have the opportunity to destroy with and close the enemy, and that lawyers aren't the ones getting in the way. I'm not talking about disavowing the laws of war or the Geneva Conventions or the Uniform Code of Military Justice.
Sounds like you are. Sounds like you are. In fact, we got other clips. Sort of same notion here. Watch.
Do something like waterboarding if it's going to keep us safe. Are you okay with waterboarding?
Senator, the law of the land is that waterboarding is not legal.
So the statement that you made, you now recant. Is that correct? They are willing to do something like waterboarding if it's going to keep us safe. You expressed that with approval.
Senator, I'm very familiar with that as a concept, having spent a year at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, guarding 700 of those that attacked us on 9/11.
I just want to be clear. Are we going to abide by the Geneva Convention and the prohibitions on torture, or are we not?
Here
Is it going
comes-
to depend
Senator,
on
as
the
I've-
circumstances?
As I've stated multiple times, the Geneva Conventions are what we base ours, but an American first national security policy is not going to do is hand its prerogatives over to international bodies that make decisions about how our men and women make decisions on the battlefield.
There it is. Can't help himself. Can't help himself. He was trying there for, the Geneva Convention, sure, that's the law, that's, it is what it is. And then when pressed on it, in America First foreign policy means we're not going to turn over our laws and our institutions to some international body that makes these decisions. In other words, yeah, I'm pro-torture. That's what he's saying. Yes, I am pro-torture. Now, by the way, a lot of the rest of the hearing, and I'm sure many of you guys, the clips that seemingly went viral were all the ones around his personal conduct, the salacious stuff. So, for example, he he cheated on like wife number 1 with wife number 2, or cheated on wife number 2 with wife number 3, and had a baby with somebody who, you know, wasn't his wife, and then got together with that one. He also allegedly is a massive, massive drunk, and it's a real problem to the point where everybody around him sort of acknowledged it. Of course, you had his mother call him an abuser of women. Like, you have, like, the personal stuff is 8 miles long. And I understand people talking about that. You had Tim Kaine really grill him on these things, and the point Tim Kaine was making is like, if you kept breaking your marriage vows, what makes you think we would approve of you? What? You're going to hold your vow to the country? You're not going to hold your vow to the country. You're going to violate this vow just like you violated the vows in your marriage. So I get the argument he was trying to make. And I get why this salacious stuff blows up. That's just always how it works. But at the same time, this is what everybody needs to understand about Pete Hegseth. I just showed you some substantive stuff. He's pro-war. He's against international law, pro-Israeli genocide, etc. But he also called for a preemptive strike on North Korea. He also called for war with Iran. He literally got into politics by being a pro-Iraq war activist. That's how he got involved. Defending George W. Bush, defending Dick Cheney, supporting the invasion, smearing and going after everybody who was correctly anti-war. By the way, when Trump ran in 2016, he came on the scene saying that he was against the Iraq war. Now, all of a sudden, this pro-Iraq war activist is picked to be Secretary of Defense. What happened, Trump? I thought you were against the Iraq war. Why do you pick people like John Bolton and Mike Pompeo and Gina Haspel and this jackass to be in your administration? It's almost like you don't care and you're not actually anti-war. This guy's whole existence was to smear anti-war protesters. That was his job. This is also a guy who said Antifa was behind January 6th. Ridiculous. But then, hilariously, he goes on to say he basically supported January 6th. So which is it? He engaged in the classic right-wing performative contradiction there, right? This January 6th is bad and it's Antifa doing it. It's blame the left. It's horrible. But then, you know, a couple days later, a week later, forget that you were pretending Antifa did it. Then all of a sudden it's, yes, actually, that was us and that was Trump's people and it was based. I mean, the guy's a joke, right? He also, we covered this, defended carpet bombing. He's the guy who got Blackwater war criminals pardoned by Trump. Go read Jeremy Scahill's book on this called Blackwater, and he talks about the Nisour Square massacre, where these Blackwater mercenaries gunned down innocent civilians in the middle of the day in a public square, right? And this guy lobbied Trump to release these Blackwater war criminals. That's what he's known for. He also said Israel should annex the entire West Bank. He believes in end times. You just heard him defend torture. So, look, what I would say to the Democrats is, I think they're doing a good job clobbering him over the head. I really do think he's crashing and burning. He's not doing a good job defending himself here. He is one of the more controversial picks, although I'm literally against every single pick that Trump has here. But for the love of God, like, we get it. We get it on the relationship stuff, on the alcoholism stuff. We get it on all of that. But if I'm going to keep it real with you, people don't give a fuck about any of that, bro. They just don't. Bill Clinton got his dick sucked in the White House by somebody that wasn't his wife, and his approval rating went up. Donald Trump slept with Karen McDougal and had the Stormy Daniels thing and is like the world's most hedonistic man, and he got elected twice. All right, like, I get it. I get what you're trying to do here. I get it's like an argument based on character, etc. But let's focus on these things I just laid out for you. This is what Democrats need to do. They need to focus on the substance of it. Literally nobody who has ever said there should be a preemptive strike on North Korea should be near any position of power vis-a-vis foreign policy. Same with war with Iran. I don't want you anywhere near any position of power. If you were a pro-Iraq war activist, that shows the worst possible judgment. You were dead wrong and proud of being dead wrong. If you defend carpet bombing as he did, I got no interest in you leading the military. If your claim to fame was getting Blackwater war criminals pardoned, I obviously cannot trust you with international law and human rights. You would be the last person who I can trust with those things. So that would be my message to the Democrats. You're doing a good job clobbering him over the head. I understand bringing up some of the relationship stuff and the alcoholism stuff and the abuse stuff. I get it. But let's put a bulk of our focus on these things, because this guy's an absolute psychopath. He's an absolute psychopath. And he 100%, when he's in the Oval Office and they're having a meeting about war with Mexico or war with Iran, this dumbass is going to be like, absolutely. And however many bombs you're thinking of dropping, double it. That's what his role is going to be. And so clobber him over those things. These things have to matter. They have to matter the most, right? But unfortunately, a lot of warmongering is sort of baked into the cake of DC, and you got a lot of warmongers in both parties, albeit it's not totally equal. I'm not doing a false equivalence here. But there's a casual acceptance of this idea of the U.S. as the world's policeman, right? Even though we've squandered that 1,000 times over and we have no right to be in that situation. We're literally arming and funding Israel as they do a genocide. Look at what we did to Iraq. We're in no place to do that. And so it's time to break up with that ideology and actually stand for something that's anti-war. The arguments make themselves about how Trump would pretend to be anti-war, but he picks the most deranged, neocon, bloodthirsty warmongers in the country to run his foreign policy. That's your line of attack, Democrats. Don't let us down. Go after him and go after him relentlessly.
Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.